So hey, what happened? A lot of people are asking about these case studies, and I thought, well, it makes sense actually to put some of them just online. And I don't want to go through each single one in one video because some things apply to some people and some don't. So I'll go through each one separately. So have a look at this one. Some people are happy to give their pictures and share their stories. Some people don't want to, and that doesn't really. I don't really mind. It's just whatever it wants to be. I don't always do before and after. Some people want it before and after. Some people don't. I don't really care what people look like. I'm more interested in how people feel and did they achieve the goal they set out to. It's as simple as that. And so I look at things such as blood work. I look at things as people's well-being and there's different ways of scoring these types of things. And I'm not going to go into detail about that. But the thing is, these are case studies. They're real people with life-changing stories. And that's the truth. You go on some websites and you see the testimonials or the case studies. And I know in some sectors they're not allowed to legally or whatever. But when you see like a testimonial, which is like, thanks, service was great. Like, R. Smith from London. It's like you look at it, just think that's not really going to interest me in what this is. And for this, the purpose is people to share their stories so that actually there's something that they can take away from it and they can find inspirational, that maybe there is some hope as well. So I'm going to go through this one in this video. It's about prevention of arthritis and osteoporosis. It's a lady called Elizabeth Bray. She is age 60 and lives in southwest London, or Surrey borders anyway. Really, really interesting story actually. So what you've got here is you've got somebody who's well educated, intelligent and can cook. Moved to the south of France about, what must be about 13 years ago now, when her husband retired. Children had grown up in their 20s and 30s. They moved to South France, had the villa and the swimming pool and the yacht. Life was pretty good, quite frankly. There's no two ways about that. And people come over to visit and all this sort of thing. And Liz is a really good cook. She adapted very quickly to the Mediterranean style of cooking. It's things sort of all the fresh fruit and veg locally grown, and maybe some pasta from Italy and these sorts of things, and salmon fillets and these sorts of stuff, and salad with that gorgeous locally, extra virgin olive oil and freshly squeezed and all this sort of stuff. It all sounds very healthy, and from the outside, yeah, definitely, I would agree with that, and certainly compared to the way that most people eat in the Western world, it is much more healthy. But it's not all plain sailing, and it's certainly not the optimal diet by any means, and we have evidence to show that. People talk about things like the French paradox. People in France, are they more healthy and they're more happy and all this? Yeah, maybe somewhat. Are they slimmer and trimmer, and do they suffer from lower rates of heart disease? Well, the answer is no, not anymore. It depends who presents the data and how they present it. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that with this. This is more about what happened here. And what happened with Liz is really exciting because it shows essentially a migrant study. What you've got is somebody who moved to a different country, adopted a different lifestyle, and then her health has started to deteriorate over time. Now, she put that down to aging. And anyway, for her, the health deterioration was essentially symptoms of osteoporosis and osteoarthritis as well. So these are things which tend to be where the joints become inflamed, and perhaps some of the bones may be slightly weaker, and that was shown through X-ray. I didn't see the X-rays personally, but I saw the letters from the clinicians and the specialists as well. So really, it was said that so steroids could be useful. There's varying different types for anti-inflammatory purposes, and then possibly surgery at a later date may be required on one or both of her knees. And a husband down there as well. You're talking about someone who's a retired senior Royal Naval officer. He turned 60 and very active as well. Played tennis frequently, out sailing very often. He was put on statin medication because of his cholesterol level, and that's the same in France as it would be in most Western countries. Got a male over 50, cholesterol's over 5, okay, or whatever the guidelines might be today or tomorrow, or whenever they stop changing these things and realise that maybe these things don't actually work. But that's a different conversation. So he was put on statins. Didn't really do very much to the cholesterol, had a lot of side effects. And most people don't understand about this thing called NNT, which I won't cover in massive detail, but it's number needed to treat. It's really what it's saying is how many people have to take the drug, in this case a statin, for it to be effective. And it's not every single person. People aren't really aware of that. And in many cases, and particularly with statin drugs, the number needed to treat can be actually higher than the number of people who suffer from side effects. But doctors don't really present it in that way. They don't say, hey, this may have a 1 in 30 chance of having a therapeutic beneficial effect on you, and a 1 in 6 chance of giving you some horrible side effects. That's not really particularly sensible way for them to portray the information if they want to sell a drug. Anyway, what happened further down the line, and this is someone who'd been treated, by the medical system to lower their cholesterol. Well, for Liz, her life changed significantly because her husband died suddenly at home of what was later deemed a heart attack. And he died at age 62. Now, he'd been through the medical system and given a clean bill of health. But he died suddenly. And that's somebody who was eating a Mediterranean diet, very active, didn't smoke, beer or two, maybe a couple of times a week, these sorts of things. Doesn't make sense. And so, Liz's life had changed massively. If anyone's been through this where they've lost somebody close to them suddenly, it's not a nice experience by any means. And Liz decided to return to the UK. She wasn't necessarily seeking any sort of redemption as such from what had happened. She was seeking answers. There's frustration, there's anger. People go through lots of emotions when these things happen. She came across the work that I'd been doing through references through Dr. Esselstyn at the Cleveland Clinic for his work with prevent reverse heart disease, and some of the references I had to Dean Ornish, who'd actually also worked with Clinton on helping him with a dietary approach to preventing any further damage to his heart after he had his stents put in. So it was almost by chance that Liz came across this. She got answers to what she needed, which was what had killed her husband. Why did he die at such a young age? But more importantly than that, and more empowering than that, she realised that actually she was in control. And so she did the research, came on board, looked at what I was doing, presented the information. She said, okay, that makes sense. And she became an absolute testimonial for what I'm doing, which is great. Really, really, really great. And there's a couple of bits that I just wanted to pull out of this. She said, after saying that you've become involved, and Liz has actually contributed some recipes to this as well. I find this with a lot of people, they do. Go off and get pictures from people of their food and saying, hey, have you tried this? Is this sensible? And almost always the answer is yes, because they get it. But this is somebody with a lifetime of culinary experience who didn't see the connection between diet and disease. And that is really powerful, really, really powerful. And for Liz, going forwards, what happened is her arthritis disappeared, the symptoms of, within a couple of months. And so went back to the GP, and the GP said, well, you don't need to take any medication, you don't have the symptoms for this, there's not really any sense for us to do this as such. Well, that's fantastic. So that was one thing that happened. She started to form the links and improve her own health, so she shifted control from the healthcare system to herself. The osteoporosis, well, that was deemed to be something that really, and this is a bit of a misnomer, so I will make a bit of a point on this. People don't understand about osteoporosis. It's a degenerative reduction in bone density that occurs with age and underuse of the skeletal and muscular systems. That's what it is. You don't treat that with drugs. You treat it by using the things which cause the bones to be under stress. So exercise, for example, particularly more resistance exercise. That thing will prevent it alone, and then you put in a healthy diet, well, then you're really protecting yourself. So that's a sort of a double redundancy almost. That makes a huge difference. People talk about calcium and these sorts of things to prevent osteoporosis. Yes, calcium is necessary, but where do you get your calcium from? Dairy is not the answer. Dairy actually accelerates the osteoporosis. And the reason why is purpose for another conversation. But it's very, very acidic, and it causes huge problems. It causes a lot of phosphate to be lost from the bones, and that causes the bones to weaken even further. So there were a few things that went on, really, but you look at some of these things. It says, when I look back at that heart-healthy diet I've been eating in the south of France, alone, most people would look at that and go, heart-healthy diet, south of France. They're going to link the two of them. Actually, it wasn't the case. And we're not talking about somebody who would ever go out and eat rubbish or anything like that. This is somebody who would cook 5 or 6 nights at home and maybe eat out once or twice a week. So it's a bit, and probably the opposite actually of what most people in the UK might do. And this is really, really important, because whilst that loss can never be brought back that Liz suffered, there's a lot of positives to take from this. She prevented any progression with the arthritis and the osteoporosis. She reversed the symptoms, and what she'd done is found a new normal. And that's really, really important to understand. It's that She found that actually it's not difficult to eat in a sensible manner if you understand the evidence, you understand the psychology why. So she's happier, she's healthier, she lost weight as well. She wasn't necessarily overweight. She went from, I think it was a UK size 14 to a size 10. And really going forward, she saves money on the food. She doesn't need to go to the doctor to get prescription medication anymore. And also the foods that she eat are better for the environment as well. And that's from a sustainability point of view. Most people don't always take that into account. They want to be green and help the environment, but actually it's the food is typically the biggest cause of problems that we find for an environment as a whole. So it's an all-round positive, really, and that's why Liz is so happy to be featured on here and share her story. But it's a great story because it's a migrant study. It's showing somebody who moved from rural France, which would be deemed as healthier, back to an urban UK environment. Typically when people move to urban environments in the UK from a more rural environment, such as rural France, they will become more fatter and they'll become sick. But in Liz's case, she became a lot more healthy because of the education that she'd received and the way of life that she'd adopted. And that's really, really powerful, really powerful. So I encourage you to have a read of this one. It's one that's, every single time I look through this, I think to myself, wow, that's made such a difference. And for me, that's what gives me a massive buzz of doing what I do. If you think this is interesting or you've got any questions, then subscribe to the channel or tell other people about it. That's what we really want to do. This will be a bottom-up movement. It's not going to come from the pharmaceutical companies telling you to stop taking their products and start eating more healthily. That's not going to happen. The government not going to tell people what to do either. It's not a vote winner. And the medical profession, well, let's be honest, they don't really have much knowledge of nutrition, and that's sad. That will change, but it will take time. So, any support that you can have, that's fantastic. Any questions that you've got about this case study or any of the others, then feel free to get in touch. Just ping me an email or pick up the phone, however you want to get in touch. I'll be happy to help you. Anyway, thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. Cheers.